Hey everyone, good afternoon. Ryan Tonking here from the Black Room at T3 here, and I wanted to come on and do a video about knowing when to take a break and what that looked like in my trading today. All right, so I did end up taking a break today. It's been a good last couple of weeks, and we're in the heart of earnings season here, so there's been a lot of trades and stuff. There's been a lot of professional gaps, and today was the first day in a while where I actually felt it necessary for me to take a break. And I wanted to break down a really important topic for me, which is keeping my psychology in check, right, and keeping that intact, so I can trade my edge most effectively. All right, so I think that entry and exit rules are incredibly important in trading. I think what's even more important is risk management, right? How much we're putting on a trade and what percentage of our account is at risk at any given time. And what I think is even more important than that is knowing where I am mentally and making sure that I'm trading from a solid mental foundation when I put a trade on. All right, so today I had a good open, and then my mental state started to deteriorate a little bit. I was still positive on the day once this happened and I took a break, but there was a couple things that went on. All right, so let's go over a couple things. One, I took the P long today, which didn't end up working. All right, I took it on a 2-minute buy setup. So I played two things at the open. The P long was a 2-minute buy setup. I actually played the 1 minute 1, 2, 3, and then I ended up adding on the 2-minute buy setup and reducing my stop. All right, this was a pro gap up, and I was looking for a break of this resistance. This had a lot of shock value in this gap. This didn't quite clear resistance. Well, it didn't clear resistance, but I was looking for a break of this for a nice move higher. So that was the thought process behind the daily chart, and I was okay playing this buy setup here, and then we had a small failure pattern. Whoops, I'm on 3-minute charts, which I don't use, but 2-minute was the buy setup right here. All right, so we had a 2-minute 1, 2, 3. There was a failure pattern inside of that, and then I ended up adding on this buy setup, and this didn't work, right? It never broke the resistance there. It didn't have enough R to R to the high of the day, which we didn't quite get to take some. I think target was 839, I believe, and so I wasn't able to get any out, and I ended up taking a stop on this. All right, so no big deal. I took a stop on it, and then the pay C from this morning, I didn't have time to put numbers in on this. Let me make this a little bit bigger here. But I did have time to mention that there was a buy setup in the pay C. All right, and we got a late open here, so we opened in this screen candle. We had a move higher, came back, did a buy setup, retested. We kind of did this breakdown failure, retested this prior support that was seen in this bottoming tail from the open here as well, and also the moving average started coming underneath price, and so this was a buy setup, right? 1-minute buy setup with this shakeout or with this breakdown failure in it, which is my favorite kind of buy setup, right? Let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so it was very spready this morning, and ended up having to sit through this. This was up like an hour and a half at this point, didn't take any, went slightly negative, just broke down here, immediately reversed, came back up, thought about taking some here, had to live through this pullback, and then we got this really nice pop here. Right, and I actually had an order. I was offering out half up here because I went to go look at something else, and then I saw this order got filled. Right, so got kind of lucky where we got this big pop and ended up getting filled here. So this was a pretty nice trade for target one, which was like 2.5 hours, I think. Right, for a target one, and then I ended up taking another quarter here, and then we ended up breaking this 5-minute trend, so the last quarter ended up trailing out here. right? So overall, a really nice trade on the PayC. So I had some equity built from the open on these trades, which is always good, right? It's always good when that happens and you catch something that trends nicely. This actually ended up continuing, so I got shaken out of this, but it ended up reversing and going higher. So okay, so that's what happened. I took one other trade, which I ended up mismanaging. That was called in the room, and that only ended up making like an R for me because I took all of it early. And then, so we had the PayC, the P, and then I watched a couple trades work very nicely that I passed on. Okay, so the OSK was a gap berry. And this was a 5-minute sell setup that I mentioned on the mic. And I said I'm going to pass on this because of this big drop to the entry here. So I ended up passing on this, and this worked really nicely. All right. The TAP also did the shakeout, retested, and did another breakout. This was a gap bully here, right? Gap down that got bought, ended up clearing. Had a shakeout, another retest, ended up passing on this because it was spready, right? So that really worked. So now we have two trades that ended up working really nicely, and I ended up passing on them, right? So feelings of missing out are starting to take more room in my mind, all right? So I had a stop at the open, had a really nice trade, so I'm up, and I'm starting to miss out on trades, right? We didn't have a really good gaps list today, and so my mental state is starting to come in question here because I'm passing on stuff and things working nicely, all right? I also have felt I've had a couple really good days the last couple of weeks where they're like 4 or 5 hour days, and I felt like I've been on the cusp of having a really nice day, right? Which is like a, 8, 9, 10 hour day. I felt like there's been the opportunity there, but I haven't been able to really grasp it. Okay, so that's in the back of my mind. I'm up like 2 Rs or something at this point after the PayC, and then I start passing on stuff, and I know that I don't have a good gaps list, and I know that there may not be a lot of stuff, and I'm passing on things that are working really nicely, okay? Then the text came up, and someone mentioned this in the room. I forget who mentioned it, but it was a really nice mention. We had this 5-minute sell set up here. We're just kind of grinding, and I think that this was a good entry under the low of the day. Stop here. We had this nice 20 MA coming out of overprice. We talked about healthy trends before and how we have all these narrow body bars. We're not getting a lot of whippy price action with where we're getting a wide range bar that gets ignored by another wide range bar, and right? So a nice start to roll over here, and I ended up passing on this, and then the text worked really nice, right? So this was a pretty good gap and got right to target down here, right? To the break of $39. Okay, so this is the third trade that I ended up passing on. Okay, so then what happened? Well, then I decided to take this APC 5-minute sell setup, which was aggressive and also borderline. Now, looking back on this after I did my review for the day, I do think that this had gotten to target, right, because we were into this support. So I do think that this had probably gotten to target, and then just after we've gotten to target, I decided to take the first 5-minute sell setup. It had a buy setup failure on the smaller time frames here, but I decided to take this 5-minute sell setup. I like the location here. We were right at this prior support area, which becomes resistance, and so this was a borderline trade. I didn't call this officially, but I did put this out as an idea, and this ended up stopping. Okay, so to recap. Had a okay morning, passed on 3 trades that worked pretty nicely, then I take the APC and I ended up taking a stop. Okay, so this is where, for me, having really good awareness of my mental state and where my emotions are is so critical. Because I actually mentioned this to somebody else. I said, I'm going to take a break because I'm starting to feel a little bit tilted, and so I'm going to take a break, right? So my mental state is I had feelings of missing out, then I had feelings of taking a stop, and because my mental state was in question before I took this APC trade, when the APC trade stopped out, that was enough to push me over the edge to say, okay, now my emotions are starting to really flare up, and so alerts are going off. Now, when I started, mental alerts, right? So when I started trading, I had no mental alerts, and those emotional feelings would just manifest themselves in ideas like, okay, well, we have to get this money back now, right? We have to take another trade, and we have to get this money back, and you missed out on a lot of stuff. There's not going to be more stuff, so let's just keep trading, right? And I'm all for continuing to trade and exploit my edge as long as I'm in a sound mental state. Because if I'm not in a sound mental state, I will... Well, here's exactly what happened. I'll tell you exactly what happened was... When I got stopped out here, I thought about re-entering under this doji bar, right? And the thought process was, okay, let's get back in where we got out, and if this moves in our favor, then it'll be like I didn't take the stop, and I could probably get even more size if I put the stop over this doji bar, right? So this is and it's funny now thinking about this, but those are the thoughts that are going on in my mind. And as soon as those thoughts started coming across my mind, I had to take that captive and say, you know what, you're about to take a trade that's not in your strategy, because that wasn't in my strategy, right? And if I would have taken that trade, I probably wouldn't have gotten out of it, and I would have taken another stop, right? And compounded the issue. Okay, so all of those thoughts started coming into my mind, and it was important for me to say, okay, alerts are going off. I'm not in the right mental state. I'm about to take a trade that's not in my strategy, and so I need to walk away for a second until I can come back with a clean slate, right? Because there is most likely going to be more possibilities today, and if I do more damage now, then who knows? I've had times early on in trading where I just kept trading, and then all of a sudden I'm at a max loss day, right? And so then I'm done, and then I can't take any more trades, right? So that's what was going on. And so then I took a break, all right? So I wanted to really kind of do this breakdown of what was going on, and this is real trading, right? I'm a real trader. I'm not a perfect trader, and so I have crazy thoughts, and I have to take responsibility of those thoughts, right? And so honestly, even though this APC stopped, I need to chalk up the fact that I decided to walk away, not take a trade that was out of my strategy. I need to chalk that up for a win, right? Because I kept my psychology intact, right? And then so after that, I was able to get in this ENR, right? Now, this was a little bit questionable as well. This was, I think Ifan mentioned this as a short, but this was basing here nicely. I like this. We had this failure pattern in the morning. We came down. We were triggering a sell setup and then base sideways. So I started scanning for 15-minute charts, and I didn't necessarily want to miss this trade. I also didn't think it was going to trigger, and so I decided to put my order in the system, give it a couple cents here, put my order in the system, and I'll do some scanning, and I'll keep an eye on it, right? Well, all of a sudden, this was a 1-minute bar that completely, look at this, completely sucked me into this trade and immediately reversed, right? That is not something that you want to see, okay? So once I triggered into this was after the break. I really believe that if I didn't take the break, I would have just panicked out of this and I would have just killed this, right? I would have just killed it for a half-hour loss, right? Stop was above this area here, and I would have just killed this for a half-hour loss. But I said, you know what? I'm going to hold on to this. I really like the daily chart on this. It's a very powerful daily chart. I feel like this still has more room lower, and I like this setup, and I also feel comfortable with my stop here. So I decided to hold on to this. It moved up, retested the moving average started to curl over price again, and I actually ended up adding to this position, reducing my stop, and then this ended up making, I I think it was $380, so just under 2 Rs here, right? And actually ended up continuing lower, but we had FOMC announcement at 2 o'clock, so I ended up taking half coming into the FOMC announcement, and then we broke the low of the day. The market was acting a little bit squirrely, so I ended up taking the rest of it, right? But I had to live through this. And the reason why I wanted to give you this example is because when I came out of the so we had the OKE that I mentioned, and I thought there was one other trade that I took. I took the HBI at the end of the day, which didn't really go anywhere right at the end of the day. Let me just look, and yeah, I thought there was one other, but I guess there isn't. So I wanted to show you this example because once I came back, I was in a better mindset where I didn't make a snap decision here, an emotional decision, right? Now, this could have easily stopped me out here, okay? It could have just as likely stopped me out as it could have continued. Well, actually, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think this definitely had a greater likelihood of continuing lower than stopping me out, but this didn't look good, right? But I decided to stick with the plan, stick with the strategy that I have, stick with the stop, and let's let this play out and see what happens, and end up being a nice winner, right? So let's just kind of recap this. I basically wanted to present what happened in the morning. Was a okay open. It wasn't a really good open, but was up at the open. Ended up missing out on some trades that worked really good. That started to put my mental state into question. Ended up taking a stop on the APC, which really kind of expanded the lack of control I had over my thought process, right? So I had thoughts going all over the place, right? And almost took a trade that was out of strategy, and then I ended up taking that break, refocusing, coming back, and then ended up catching a pretty nice trade, right? So I wanted to go over this. I don't think that it's good to just randomly take breaks, especially in earnings season. But if you're in a place where your psychology is damaged and you're in a place where you don't think that you can effectively execute your edge, then for me, it's so imperative to take a break, collect myself, and come back with a clean slate, right? So I hope this helps. And again, this is always a process. I know I say that in all of the videos, right? And this has been an evolving process. I still have crazy thoughts, right? But that doesn't mean that I need to act on them. All right. So I hope this helps you guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions or anything, and I will talk to you guys soon. Thanks, guys.